Shuckalaka kapow. How's it going, old schoolers? You're kicking it old school with Russell J.S., and I am your host, Russell J.S. I'm making a unique kind of video tonight. Everybody's talking about the whole thing about digital, streaming, physical media, and such. And I want to go ahead and talk about what I feel about all the different things of watching movies or listening to music. After all, I am an old school guy. I say that I'm kicking it old school, right? But yeah, video games as well too. Well, the whole thing, it seems to be a new trend now. Ever since Netflix and Netflix and Redbox and you get all these different Hulu, iHeartRadio, all these different streaming services. I am a huge collector of physical media when it comes to movies and music and video games and books. But it's the thing is, like, people ask me, how do I feel? Well, I'm going to say it like this, okay? I do have Netflix, and I have opportunities on YouTube to watch movies. Or, like I buy a digital, like say a DVD Blu-ray combo with a digital code to put on my phone or my tablet. But, in many ways, I watch Netflix for like original programming, original movies and documentaries and things. And I have SiriusXM in Autobot Road Trip, aka my Chevy Equinox. But when I'm at home and I want to watch a movie and my father thinks I'm crazy about this, I want to watch a movie or listen to music, I go for the physical stuff. And if you're new to the channel, feel free to hit a like, subscribe, leave comments in the box down below, ring the bell for notifications down there, and tell your friends, your family, your mom, your dad, your brother, your sister, your aunt, your uncle, your grandma, your grandpa, your niece, your nephew, your grandson, your granddaughter, your cousins, your friends, your girlfriend, boyfriend, husband, wife, your coworkers, your roommates, a lot of people, your supervisor at work, your teachers, your professors, your pets, your neighbors, anybody who likes to kick it old school. Now, without further ado, let's check into the bad Oscar I'm talking about, shall we? Now, when it comes to like music, I love a lot of music that was recorded even before 1994 or 1989, classic rock, some old blues. Now, when it comes to like, say like an old band that's been around, that was around way back when, say even before I was born, because I remember in the early 90s as a teenager, me and a lot of other kids my age were getting into classic rock. We were getting into the Doors. We were getting into Hendrix and Zeppelin and Sabbath and, Janis Joplin, Grateful Dead. Other than our regular hard rock and modern hard rock and heavy metal. And what happened was, we were buying the albums on CD or cassette, but some of us were lucky enough who had parents or maybe had an uncle that had that album on vinyl. Now, my Uncle Robin, God rest his soul, when he found out that I was into the stuff that he and my dad were into back in the 60s, like the Beatles, the Rolling Stones, the Doors, Hendrix, whatever have you, whatever they were into, like that hard rock stuff. When he moved down here from Arizona, which he lived for a long time from New Jersey, he had quite the record album collection. He gave me, I was so enthusiastic, especially when he pulled out some albums from his collection to give to me. He gave me 3 Doors records. He gave me 2 Zeppelin records, a Santana record, Iron Butterfly's classic Inagata de Vida. And, I thought to myself, you could get this all on CD. That's what my dad said. But when it came to older albums, I was preferring, I started collecting vinyl at that moment. And what happened was vinyl records got discontinued somewhere in the late 80s or early 90s for the moment. But after a while, vinyl started to make a comeback slowly. I want to say maybe after a decade and a half, even after they discontinued cassette tapes. And they still put CDs out even 30 plus years later, or should I say 40 plus years later. Because back in the day when CDs became the new format, they were like anything. The VCR, the cassette deck, it was a rich man's toy at first. And it wasn't until the early 1990s where they made CD players affordable. I mean, same thing with VHS recorders. I remember the first VCR my dad brought home. It was this Zenith, this big bulky thing. By today's standards, it couldn't fit in that entertainment cabinet over there. It was so huge and bulky. And I think it set him back like $800 or $900. We had that thing from 1983 to 1997 or 98 when they didn't make components for it anymore. He only got that thing repaired maybe 2 or 3 times, but then they stopped making components for it, so he had to chuck it. And then I remember he sent me out to Walmart with his credit card to buy a new VCR. And it was this, I guess it was a Magnavox at the time, Philips Magnavox. And it cost $80. And the DVD players were starting to come out at that point. DVD became the big rage. And you were paying $600 for a DVD player. Nowadays, a DVD player, a real small one that hooks up to your TV over there, $50 or $60 easy. Because now they're trying to discontinue CDs and DVDs, but what they don't realize is there is a high demand in physical media. Now, I remember when I bought my parents their first DVD player, and it cost me, I think, $250. I got it off of a discount because of the place I was working at the time. And I bought it for my parents for their 30th wedding anniversary back in 2002. My dad was like a kid with a new toy. And before you know it, he's buying DVDs, and then I'm buying DVDs, and we're pretty much shelving the VHS stuff. And then later on, we would play a VHS movie, and we'd see like the difference, with the quality, how we're spoiled by DVDs. But I want to show you, how I prefer physical media over digital. See, like some of my favorite movies right here. I used to have these on VHS, and now I've got them on DVD. Well, this is the prequel trilogy, not the original, but who's going to fault me for that? Nowadays, everybody's loving the prequels now since Disney took over, because nobody's happy with the sequel trilogy and the standalone movies that Disney put out. I think they're okay, but, Star Wars has been better, except for Rogue One. I thought Rogue One was pretty awesome. Best Star Wars since The Empire Strikes Back. Try to change my mind in the comments if you want. But anyway, yeah, and you know what? I got some CDs right here of some bands that had been around even either before I was born or around the time I was born. Like, look here. I got, when it comes to their older stuff, I could show you how I prefer to collect if they're still around, if they were still around at the time when I was in my teens and 20s, and I'm still this way to this day, this is how I preferred to collect any of their music. Like right here, see, The Doors, The Future Starts Here. This is it's an Essential Doors collection. Led Zeppelin, Early Days. I got 2 different Van Halen best ofs. I got Van Halen, the 2-disc Best of Both Worlds, along with Van Halen Best of Volume 1. Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers. This one's the Best of Everything, 1976 to 2016. Now, the thing is, when it comes to their regular albums that they put out, around that time, either before I was born or around the time I was born or after I was born, here we go right here, see? Same artists. I prefer their regular albums on vinyl or cassette over getting them on CD. And sometimes I have a hard time finding certain albums on vinyl where I have no choice but to buy them on CD, but still. Now, if these same bands, if some of them are still putting out new music, you might ask, hey, do you still collect whatever new music they would put out at that time? Well, yeah. Right here. See, you got two Van Halen albums from the 90s. 1991's For Unlawful Carnal Knowledge, or 92, and 95's Balance. Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers, Into the Great Wide Open. Tom Petty, Wildflowers. I mean, the thing is, the reason why I'm not really a big fan of digital media is because, something about I love collecting. I love having this on a shelf. Say I find the Blues Brothers on my Netflix queue. Why am I going to watch it on Netflix when I could just pull it off the shelf and pop the disc in the player, right? Same thing with Goonies, same thing with Jaws and Star Wars. And the thing is about digital media, some of it like Netflix or iHeartRadio or Hulu, whatever have you, you're paying so much a month. I don't know how much you pay a month, how much you might pay a month, but I think I pay $20 a month for Netflix, and I pay $8 a month for Sirius in my car. And one thing about Sirius is I love the fact it's not like regular radio, where radio plays the life out of certain songs because it was one of their biggest hits. I remember there was a time when the video stores had come out, where they were renting out VHS movies, because the thing is, when you went to a store in the electronics department where they were selling VHS movies, those things were going for $80 a tape. And you had the video stores out there where you could rent the same movie. Say you wanted to rent the Blues Brothers, you could go ahead and pick up the Blues Brothers at the video store, or you could pick up Jaws at the video store and pay $2 each, for the video. And then you just got to return it, by a certain time the next day. Otherwise, you deal with late fees. And, another thing was with, cable TV, when you had HBO and Showtime and Cinemax, if you had a VCR, you could go ahead and take a blank VHS tape that you could buy them, in a pack at the stores, like where they were selling electronics, where they sold radios and TVs and VCRs and things. And, HBO, you just look at the cable guide, that monthly magazine that gives you, the scheduled programming, what's going to be on. And say you want to go ahead and, the Goonies is going to be on Saturday night at 8 p.m. Let's go ahead and get a blank VHS tape so we could, tape it off of HBO or Showtime. That way we always have it. You were able to tape movies, tape your TV shows if you missed them, set the timer. It was a thing where we served ourselves back then. Nowadays, the video stores are long gone. There are very few that exist in the world. And I really wish they would bring that back. Mom and pop record stores specialize in vintage vinyl, and some artists are putting out new music. Taylor Swift, of course, I can care less about Taylor Swift, or I could care less about Billie Eilish or Miley Cyrus, who I like to call Miley Virus. I could care less about those artists. I could care less about Justin Bieber. If Metallica's putting out a new album, cool. I hope, they'll have the CD and they'll have it on vinyl. All these artists, you even find Metallica's Black album on vinyl nowadays. I can remember when you can only find it on CD or cassette, back in the 90s. The only place where you were able to find record albums at the time was at your local thrift shop, or maybe there's a mom and pop record shop that specializes in selling vintage vinyl. Because I can remember people were selling their vinyl albums, donating them to thrift stores, And, you know, the same thing when VHS was going the way of the dinosaurs. People were donating their VHS movies or selling them to the, you know, pawn shops or the flea markets. And, you know, nowadays, you know, when DVD came out, that was the big thing. And then Blu-ray would come out. And now you got 4K and all this digital stuff. I mean, but the problem is when it comes to, you know, music and movies on a digital platform that you're paying for, you know, you got the song, you got the movie, you got the TV show, but I've seen it on Netflix where I had put movies on my queue. I've been guilty of it, but certain movies where they put an announcement that they're going to be taking it off in a couple weeks. So I have to watch it before they decide to up and take it off of Netflix. And that's why I still like to collect CDs and DVD movies and vinyl. Because, you know, the industry is trying to do away with the format so they could go ahead and charge you, you know, for stuff that they're gonna, you know, they're gonna pull off of the streaming service. Now, am I against the streaming services? You know, hey, if anybody prefers the streaming services over physical media, hey, that's you, man. That's cool. But there's a good majority of people, including myself, who prefer to have the physical collection. I mean, back in the day when you bought record albums, okay, in the 60s and 70s, I mean, some people, they heard the one song on the radio and found out who the artist was. Like, let's say the main song off Led Zeppelin 1, I think was Good Times, Bad Times. You know, people heard that and they heard Dazed and Confused. Not only were they buying that album, you know, they wanted that song, but they bought the whole album just for the artwork and just for maybe a good group shot right there. But what happened was they would listen to this whole thing and they were waiting, they're ready for the next Led Zeppelin record to come out. You know, and I mean, nowadays, like a lot of the stuff like America's Modern Pastime is, you know, sadly it's going away. I mean, you know, movie theaters nowadays, movies are, you know, being made, say like on a $3 million budget. They're barely breaking even at the box office. I mean, they almost got it. They're at that mark where they're about ready to make the budget, and then quickly they're on their way to the streaming platforms or the disc platforms. But like Masters of the Universe, I just saw that, I think, wow, about a month ago, you know, almost 2 months ago, and already it's coming to Prime. I mean, you know, it's like the pastime is almost going away. And my suggestion is find your favorite music and your favorite movies, buy a DVD player, you know, buy a stereo with a turntable, start buying your favorite music and movie, you know, your favorite music on CD or vinyl, and find as many DVDs and Blu-rays of your favorite movies and TV shows as you can, or, you know, gaming consoles. Go on eBay, go to flea markets, go to thrift stores, any place where you can find it. And, you know, that way we could prove that this is not, you know, a lost pastime, because people want the physical media. They, you know, we want to have a collection. We want to go ahead and pull the DVD or pull the CD out of the shelf, or or, you know, in this case, the record album off the shelf and listen to it. You know, some people, I mean, I don't know, maybe it's because I have that independence about me. I don't know. But I know there's a lot of people out there that would agree with me. Anyway, that's all the time I have for this video. Remember, keep it real, keep it fresh, keep it chill, keep kicking it old school. Listen to old school music on either vinyl or CD. Watch old school movies or TV shows on DVD or Blu-ray. Play old school video games on any kind of console you can find to hook up to your TV. Get you enough of love, get you enough of peace, get you enough of tranquility, get you enough of less chaos, no chaos, less drama, no drama. Get you enough of everything and anything you truly desire. And as always, this is your old pal, Russell J.S. I'm wishing you Godspeed. May the force be with you always. And shuckalaka kapow!